In addition, he works closely with Science National Honor Society and the Science Olympiad. Will you join me in welcoming PRHS Teacher of the Year, Mr. Dean Landers.
On December 13th, 2012, first grader Jesse Lewis wrote, "I love you," in the frost on the window of his mother's car. Jesse's father said that Jesse thought he could conquer the world. He was a brave little boy who had no fear. He always put everybody before himself. On December 14th, at St. Hill Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, Jesse was fatally shot as he shouted to his fellow classmates to run for safety. Stories like this break my heart. And tragically, they're not unique. There's a never-ending stream of heartbreaking stories coming from the news that just constantly demonstrate the depravity of humanity. And I hate it. This world is infected with megalomaniacs, starvation, disease, racism, bombings, fear, genocide, broken relationships, shattered dreams, and of course, mean teachers. A constant barrage of devastating news from around the world. It's so easy to get wrapped up in the despair. Some days, I don't feel like the world's going down the drain. I feel like we're down the drain, we're at the landfill, and it's on fire. We live in kind of a strange time. People are caving into the emotional fatigue and resigning themselves to despair and meaninglessness. As evidence for this, look at the stories that modern critics celebrate. The Walking Dead is a show about the decay of civilization and the decay of people, literally. In Ridley Scott's movie Prometheus, the search for meaning is frustrating, laughable, and violently empty of significance. And in the Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin has that nasty habit of killing off characters as soon as you love them. Curiously, these types of stories are unique to our modern times. Tim Keller describes this in his book, King's Cross. We live in one of the first eras in history in which it is widely believed that a happy ending is the mark of inferior art. Why? Many are certain that, ultimately, life is meaningless, and that happy endings are misleading at best. Life, therefore, would be better represented by paradox, irony, and a sense of frustration. Maybe you didn't get into the college you were supposed to get into. Maybe that relationship didn't turn out like it was supposed to. And maybe that person you love was not supposed to get sick. But maybe nothing's supposed to happen at all. It's just a roll of dice in a world of increasing disorder. You know, I don't think you, or I believe that. I don't think that's how the world is supposed to be. I do not think that's how the world is supposed to be. School shootings are not supposed to happen. Suffering sucks. The brokenness in this world is wrong, and as soon as we recognize that, we're drawn to hope. Hope for meaning, for restoration, for peace, and for victory. Let's look at the types of stories that are abidingly popular. They always offer an element of hope, even against and in the face of overwhelming odds, and at great cost. In preparation for today, I reread the end of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. At the climax of the story, it seems totally justified to give in to despair. Friends have died, the defense of Hogwarts has failed, and, spoiler alert, Harry's essentially dead. But it's at this darkest hour, and in the midst of many sorrows, that impossibly, Harry comes back to life, finally destroys Lord Voldemort, and brings peace to the wizarding world. Is this just escapist fantasy? Do we love these stories because we're trying to dull the pain of reality with fanciful ideas about restoration, peace, freedom, hope? I think it's much more than this. It's more than escapism. In his essay on fairy stories, J.R.R. Tolkien explains that stories based on hope, and even happy endings, are so consistently satisfying because there's an element of truth, of reality to them. Tolkien says, the joy of the happy ending is not essentially escapist or fugitive. It does not deny the existence of sorrow and failure. The possibility of these is necessary to the joy of deliverance. It denies, in the face of much evidence, if you will, universal final defeat, and insofar is the most excellent of good news, giving a fleeting glimpse of true joy, joy beyond the walls of this world, as poignant as grief. There is so much about this world that's broken, but that is not the end. There's a reason that the hope for a better world is always fighting to be heard of the doomsday prophets. Not because this hope is wishful thinking, but because this hope comes from an underlying reality that the world can be a better place. That even in places filled with danger and sorrow, there's meaning, goodness, and the power to defeat evil. Echoes of this hope resound in the enduring stories that stir our hearts and lift our spirits. These stories do not ignore the suffering. They do not accept the suffering. They overcome the suffering. At the end of one of my favorite stories, Star Wars, the rebellion is on the brink of destruction when finally the Emperor falls and Anakin Skywalker is redeemed. At the conclusion of the most recent Batman trilogy, both Gotham City and Bruce Wayne finally overcome the darkness and find peace. All of the great stories remind us to be hopeful. G.K. Chesterton says, fairy tales are more than true. Not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten. You cannot defeat dragons passively. It takes deliberate efforts to make hopes reality. During the 1980s, the polio virus killed or paralyzed more than 350,000 children annually. In 1988, the world came together to commit to the eradication of this devastating disease. They shared a vision, a hope, of a world where the physical, economic, and relational problems inflicted by polio would be non-existent. Today, the CDC reports that since the launch of global polio eradication efforts in 1988, recorded cases of polio have dropped more than 99%. In the face of overwhelming odds, a few bold leaders dared to hope for a healthier world. Hundreds of thousands of children now have the freedom to enjoy a more fulfilling life. This is hope realized. Where will you bring hope into this world? For 12 years, you've been invested in, graduates. For 12 years, you've been training, learning, preparing, legitimately dealing with suffering and hardships. And now, it's time to step out and make real what it is you hope for. Act on it, and slay the dragons that tempt us towards despair. I know things haven't always worked out the way you expected. Some of you have very good reasons for exchanging hope for cynicism. But by definition, hope defies the odds. When the future or the past is dark and haunting, the imperative for hopefulness is even greater. In the movie The Princess Bride, it is not until the odds are 60 men versus 3 guys, Wesley, Inigo, and Physic, when the cheerful Physic finally says, Inigo, I hope we win. For me, as a Christian, I have hope in the continuing work of a personal God who loved me so much that he entered into this broken world to deal with it firsthand. He loves me and the world on a staggering scale I can scarcely imagine. Because of this love, I can respond to his call to be a vessel, a conduit of hope for my students, my colleagues, my friends, the world. However you choose to understand or define God, I think we can all agree that this world shouldn't be broken, and we are all called to infuse hope into the lives of others. I've seen many of you thrive despite the odds. Because of your growth over the past few years, I have hope. You have the capacity to be harbingers of peace and healing. Maybe your hope is to eradicate some disease, or maybe it's something else. Whatever it is you hope for, it is up to you to fight the despair and actively bring about that hope. Take what you've been given, and as you embark on this next adventure, use it to bring about the place we all long for. The darkness is real, but we are called to resist it. Class of 2013, be conduits of hope today. Slay the dragons of despair and make the hopes of a better world tangible realities. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zena.